Imagine tuning into your local weather station for a decade, relying on one specific voice to keep you safe through historic hurricanes, and then, poof, he's gone.
Just completely gone.
Right. No goodbye, just a sudden social media blackout and a massive corporate lawsuit.
It is honestly wild when you look at how fast it escalated.
It really is. Welcome to Meteorology Matters, the podcast that dives deep into the science, chaos, and stories behind the weather that shapes our world.
We're really excited to get into this one.
This show was created by meteorologist Rob Jones. Now, let's get into today's episode of Meteorology Matters.
Yeah, let's do it.
But before we really start unpacking this incredible situation unfolding down in Southwest Florida, please take a quick moment to like, follow, comment, and rate the podcast.
It makes a huge difference for us.
It really does. We also highly encourage you to follow Rob Jones directly. You can find him on Instagram under the handle Meteorologist, on TikTok at TV Meteorologist, and on YouTube by searching Rob Jones Hurricane, where you can also find the entire Meteorology Matters podcast playlist.
Definitely go check those out.
So, all right, picture this. You live in a region where the weather isn't just, small talk.
Right. It's a matter of survival down there.
Exactly. The relationship you have with your local meteorologist is uniquely intimate. And today, based on the extensive research that has been done on this massive broadcasting fallout, we're looking at a situation that has absolutely fractured a local Florida community.
Fractured is probably the best word for it.
Yeah, it severed the relationship between the viewers and their primary news source. We're examining the core conflict between former Southwest Florida Chief Meteorologist Matt Devitt and the Fort Myers Broadcasting Company, which operates Wink News.
And this all started back on January 8th, 2026, when Devitt was abruptly fired.
Right, and what followed wasn't just a few disgruntled emails to the station. It was a massive community backlash, a complete social media revolt, and eventually this highly aggressive 60-page lawsuit filed by the broadcasting company.
Yeah, the research that has been done on this shows a situation escalating far, far beyond a standard employment dispute.
Oh, totally.
I mean, we're looking at a full-on collision between corporate control, rigid legal contracts, and just the raw emotional loyalty of a public that relies on these broadcasters.
It really exposes the precarious nature of modern local news, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
And so the mission for today's episode is to really unpack the research surrounding this absolute public relations nightmare. We're going to analyze the legal standing of non-competes in Florida broadcasting.
Which is a fascinating, complex maze on its own.
Oh, it's so complicated. And we'll explore what happens when an on-air personality's personal brand completely eclipses the network's corporate brand.
Well, it's a fundamental shift in media dynamics, right?
Yeah.
Decades ago, the station call letters were everything.
Yeah, the channel number was what mattered.
Exactly. But now, the individual holding the clicker in front of the green screen, they hold the power.
It's all about the personality.
Right. And to really understand how this blew up so spectacularly, we have to start by looking closely at the timeline of his sudden disappearance.
Let's trace that timeline because, honestly, it moves incredibly fast.
It really does.
So Devitt had a 10-year tenure at Wink News. 10 years.
That is a very long time in local broadcasting.
Think about what happens in 10 years in Florida. That's a decade of building trust through intense, life-threatening weather events.
Yeah, a lot of storms in that decade.
So many. And then on January 8th, he's just fired. 2 days later, on January 10th, he posts on Facebook.
And that post is really what lit the match.
Yeah, he tells his audience that his time as chief meteorologist has come to an end. But he specifically states that the decision wasn't one he expected, and he didn't agree with it.
Right, and he was completely denied the opportunity to say goodbye on air.
That's the part that really stings for people. He explicitly called it a, quote, complete shock to himself, his family, and his coworkers.
Well, the phrasing in that initial communication is meticulously crafted.
You think so? Like intentionally?
Whether intentionally or just intuitively, yeah. He immediately anchors his message in community service.
Oh, yeah, he definitely does that.
He mentions the profound honor of serving Southwest Florida through severe storms forming in the Gulf of Mexico.
Right, and he specifically names Hurricanes Irma, Ian, Helene, and Milton.
Exactly. And these aren't just weather events. For that community, those names represent collective trauma.
That makes total sense. So by invoking them, he's sort of reminding the audience of their shared history.
Precisely. He's saying, I was in the trenches with you when it mattered most.
And he adds a line that feels incredibly pointed. He says his goal was always keeping the audience safe and informed, quote, without the hype,
That's such a crucial
It
phrase.
really jumped out at me. It feels like a direct commentary on the current state of broadcast meteorology,
Oh, absolutely is.
where every thunderstorm is treated like the apocalypse
Mhm.
just to keep viewers glued to the screen.
Right. It establishes his position as the calm, reliable voice. It's a direct contrast to the sensationalism that often drives local television ratings.
Which viewers really appreciate when things get scary.
Exactly. Look at it from the viewer's perspective. When a major catastrophic storm is churning in the Gulf of Mexico, you don't want manufactured drama.
No, you want facts.
You don't want panic. You want accurate, level-headed interpretation of the data coming from NOAA.
Right, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration data.
Exactly. By emphasizing that he provided information without the hype, he reinforces his personal brand as a trusted public servant.
So he's subtly separating himself from the corporate entity.
Yeah, separating himself from the entity that prioritizes ratings over reality.
And immediately following that post, the corporate fallout is just swift.
Yeah,
Devitt loses access to his official social media weather page.
they shut it down fast.
Yeah, the station effectively unplugs his direct line to his hundreds of thousands of followers. And meanwhile, Wink News issues a press release.
This is where it gets bizarre.
It is crazy. They completely ignore the massive elephant in the room.
They didn't mention him at all.
Not a single word. Instead of addressing the sudden departure of their 10-year chief meteorologist, they put out a statement about moving to a new, modern studio.
Right, they highlight that this is their first major facility move since 1954.
Yeah, and they claim the new studio will provide faster, clearer news. Like, what?
The contrast in public relations strategies there is just staggering.
It's tone deaf.
It really is. On one hand, you have a human being expressing emotional vulnerability, talking about the shock to his family and his dedication to public safety.
Okay.
On the other side, you have a broadcasting corporation issuing a highly sterile, forward-looking statement about building infrastructure.
They fundamentally misread the room.
Completely. They attempted to substitute technological advancement, shiny new cameras and faster graphics, for human connection.
But viewers don't form emotional bonds with a weather graphic.
Exactly. They form bonds with the person explaining it to them.
It's like showing up to your favorite local diner. You've gone there every Friday for 10 years.
Right, a staple in your routine.
And the head chef, who knows your exact order, who knows your kids' names, is just gone one day.
Just vanished.
And instead of explaining what happened, the owners are just aggressively pointing to the new shiny tables and the upgraded cash register, pretending nothing happened.
That's a great analogy.
Doesn't a station owe the audience some level of closure? When you invite someone into your living room every single evening for a decade, there's an unspoken agreement there, isn't there?
You're hitting on the core concept here. It's the unwritten social contract of local broadcasting.
Social contract, yeah.
Television news, particularly local weather, relies heavily on what sociologists call parasocial relationships.
Where you feel like you know them, even though you don't.
Right. The audience feels a genuine, deeply personal connection to the broadcaster, even though the broadcaster has no idea who they are individually. They trust them.
But so if they just vanish.
When a station terminates a beloved anchor without allowing an on-air farewell, they blatantly violate that social contract.
The viewers feel robbed.
The viewers don't interpret it as standard corporate restructuring or, an internal human resources decision. They experience it as the abrupt, unjustified confiscation of a trusted friend.
And Wing's silence on the matter really didn't help.
No, it didn't project strength at all. It projected evasion.
And that silence absolutely did not quiet the situation. It actively fueled a massive online revolt.
A huge one.
The research that has been done compiled a master packet of the public reaction. And when you actually dig into the numbers, it's remarkable to see how quickly a community can mobilize against a television station.
The researchers analyzed a sample of 426 public comments to truly understand the psychology of the audience's reaction.
And the data reveals a highly lopsided public sentiment.
It's a PR team's worst nightmare.
Let's look at the hard data from the research. Out of those 426 comments, 219 explicitly mentioned Wink.
And the vast majority of those mentions are overwhelmingly negative.
We're talking anger, boycotts, the whole 9 yards. And then 125 comments explicitly mention Matt, almost universally in support.
The loyalty is striking.
But here's what's wild to me. 40 comments actually demand a lawsuit or a countersuit.
They wanted legal action.
Yeah. And 27 comments focus entirely on hitting Wink where it hurts their ratings and advertiser revenue.
Those numbers perfectly quantify the outrage. Notice that the public reaction wasn't a measured debate about the nuances of at-will employment.
No, not at all.
It was an immediate, highly emotional mobilization. When you read through the research, the comments repeatedly framed Devitt as the individual who literally saved their lives or their homes during extreme weather events.
Which creates a massive bond.
It creates a psychological phenomenon akin to trauma bonding.
Oh, wow, trauma bonding. That makes sense.
When you rely on someone's voice while the wind is tearing the roof off your neighbor's house, that forge is incredibly strong.
And it overrides everything else.
That intense loyalty completely overrides any residual corporate brand loyalty the station thought it had.
The phenomena of loyalty here is just incredible to witness. The audience essentially views the meteorologist as their ultimate protector.
And it wasn't just local viewers getting involved either.
Right, we see high-profile national figures jumping into this local Facebook comment section.
Which is very unusual.
Janice Dean, the senior meteorologist from Fox News, offered her public support, telling him that when one door closes, others open.
Showing that industry solidarity.
And then you have former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich demanding an explanation from the station on social media.
Yeah, publicly calling their handling of the situation JV League.
It's fascinating when national political figures and network personalities insert themselves into a local broadcast dispute.
It instantly elevates the conflict. It moves it from a regional human resources issue to a national talking point.
And Gingrich's use of the term JV League, meaning junior varsity, that's a direct insult.
It's a highly visible attack on the professional competence of the Fort Myers Broadcasting Company's management.
It validates the anger of the local viewers, too.
Exactly. It signals to them, you're right to be mad. The station's behavior is objectively substandard, even to outsiders.
The research also analyzes how these comment sections stopped being a simple discussion about weather and morphed into a massive community referendum on trust.
And here is where the environment gets intensely heated.
Really heated. The research shows that angry viewers began projecting their own political frustrations onto the corporate entity.
They really let loose in the comments.
Commenters started throwing out wild political labels, calling Wink everything from Trumpified to a communist organization.
Or accusing them of being aligned with the DNC.
Right. And I want to make it clear to the listener, we have to look at those labels with complete impartiality.
Oh, absolutely. We aren't endorsing any of those viewpoints.
We're simply imparting what the source material showed. And the fact that terms like communist and Trumpified are being hurled in the exact same comment thread directed at the exact same local news station is incredibly revealing.
It demonstrates how a local, relatively mundane corporate dispute can act as a proxy for broader societal anger. These viewers felt disenfranchised by a corporate decision they had absolutely no control over.
They couldn't change the firing, so they lashed out.
Right, and in response to that powerlessness, they reached for the most extreme, emotionally charged political insults available to express their feeling of betrayal.
It doesn't really matter that those labels don't logically apply to a local television station's HR department.
No, what matters is the intense volatility of the situation. It shows a community pushed to its rhetorical edge.
But wait, I have to challenge this data a bit based on how we all know the internet works.
Okay, let's hear it.
Isn't a social media comment section basically just a concentrated echo chamber of outrage?
It often is, yes.
People who are perfectly content with the new weather anchors or who just don't care aren't going to spend their Tuesday afternoon writing lengthy, angry paragraphs on Facebook.
That's a very fair point.
So how representative is this 426 comment sample of the actual broader viewing public in Southwest Florida?
That is a crucial analytical distinction, and you're right to point it out. A comment section is absolutely not a scientifically weighted demographic survey.
Right.
It inherently amplifies the most activated, emotionally driven segment of the audience.
The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
However, in the business of local broadcasting, the loudest segment often dictates the public narrative.
Ah, I see.
Even if it is just an echo chamber, it's an echo chamber that local advertisers and media buyers actively observe.
Because they don't want their brand associated with a mob.
Exactly. The sheer volume and velocity of the negative comments create a perception of brand toxicity. And in media, perception quickly becomes reality.
That makes sense.
That toxicity has real operational consequences for the station's bottom line.
And while the public was screaming online and threatening advertiser boycotts, the actual operational weather room at Wink was quietly unraveling behind the scenes.
The internal turnover was severe.
We move into the next phase of the research here, which tracks the talent exodus from the station, and Devitt's calculated, highly publicized online return.
The timeline accelerates significantly as we move into February.
Yeah, on February 11, 2026, Devitt's Facebook page is restored.
And it's not just a quiet, under-the-radar return.
No, he comes back making some noise. He explicitly, publicly thanks Florida Attorney General James Uthmeier for stepping in to help assist with the restoration of the page.
Which is a massive flex.
It really is. Devitt then immediately rebrands his digital presence to Matt Devitt Weather.
Setting up his own shop, essentially.
Right, and at the exact same time, the station is facing a severe internal crisis. In January, just weeks after Devitt's firing, meteorologist Nikki Sheeks leaves the station for Palm Beach.
So that's 2 gone.
Then on February 15th, meteorologist Greg Rule announces his departure.
Another one.
Rule was an avid surfer, a Florida native, and a solid 6-year veteran of the station. He announces a voluntary exit. So suddenly, Gilix is just bleeding talent.
Let's contextualize that for a second. That equates to 3 meteorologists departing a single local station in a span of under 2 months.
It has to be a scheduling nightmare.
It is a massive operational disruption, and the contrast between the exits is also highly instructive.
How so?
Well, Rule issues a polite, incredibly grateful public statement. He thanks the viewers, he praises his coworkers, creating a very graceful transition.
A traditional sign-off.
Right. This stands in stark opposition to the explosive, involuntary termination of the chief meteorologist just weeks prior.
But regardless of how they left, the result for the station is the same.
Exactly. Empty chairs in front of the weather graphics.
What does this level of sudden turnover do to a local station's operational credibility?
It's devastating.
You are looking at a completely depleted weather team just months before hurricane season begins. That's terrifying for viewers.
It creates a severe operational vulnerability for the business.
When NOAA starts issuing severe warnings, and the EPA is monitoring the potential environmental impacts of a massive storm surge hitting coastal infrastructure, the audience absolutely needs familiar faces.
They need trusted faces interpreting that highly technical data. A station spends years and massive amounts of capital marketing, billboards, community events, building a branding aura.
They want to be the weather authority.
Exactly. They market themselves as the definitive, unshakable authority on weather. So when they lose that aura due to rapid talent attrition, they don't merely lose passive viewers who might flip the channel.
What do they lose?
They lose the specific active trust required when a Category 5 hurricane is approaching the Gulf of Mexico.
And trust is hard to win back.
Viewers will abandon a station in a heartbeat if they feel the new team lacks the historical, on-the-ground experience to guide them safely through a life-threatening crisis.
Because the stakes are so high.
Right. If the new guy mispronounces a local county name during a tornado warning, the credibility is instantly shot.
Oh man, that's a great point. One mispronounced town, and the audience is like, this person doesn't know us.
Exactly.
And we also have to look at the unprecedented nature of the Attorney General's involvement in all this.
That was a shocking development.
The optics of a state-level Attorney General stepping in to restore a local weatherman's Facebook page are just wild to me. It completely blurs the line between local news operations and state-level political influence.
It really demonstrates the vast power of audience mobilization in the digital age.
How so?
Well, an attorney general typically handles major state litigation, consumer protection on a massive scale, or complex constitutional issues.
Oh, not Facebook passwords.
Exactly. Intervening in a dispute over a meteorologist's social media page indicates that the political apparatus recognized the sheer volume of public anger.
They saw an opportunity.
Aligning with a beloved local figure against a seemingly faceless corporation is a highly effective, low-risk political maneuver.
It buys immense goodwill with a highly active voting bloc.
Absolutely. It also signals to the broadcasting company that they are losing the public relations war on multiple fronts.
Not just with viewers, but with the state's political infrastructure.
Right.
Wink clearly realizes they are losing that PR war badly. So, at the end of March and into early April, they launched their legal counterstrike.
And they went big.
And this is where the research gets incredibly detailed and, frankly, pretty ruthless. Fort Myers Broadcasting Company files a 60-page lawsuit against Devitt and his new business entity.
A 60-page complaint requires extensive preparation.
You don't just type that up over the weekend.
No, it's not something drafted overnight. It is designed to be completely comprehensive, systematically dismantling the narrative that Devitt had established since his January termination.
They brought the receipts.
They really did.
Yeah.
The broadcasting company is seeking over $100,000 in damages and, crucially, a permanent injunction to shut down his competing online operations entirely.
Let's break down the specific allegations in this corporate counterstrike, because they paint a vastly different picture of what was going on behind the scenes.
It's a completely different narrative.
First, the lawsuit attacks Devitt's initial claim that the firing was a complete shock. Wink provides documented proof.
Right. They present evidence of a year of human resources meetings.
They outlined a formal leadership plan instituted way back in November 2025.
The most significant piece of evidence they introduced regarding his awareness of his standing is a documented, unpaid, 3-day suspension.
Wait, really? An unpaid suspension?
Yes. It occurred from November 3rd to November 5th, 2025. The stated reasons were attendance issues and taking extended breaks.
Wow.
In the context of corporate employment law, a multi-day unpaid suspension is a severe disciplinary action.
It's usually the final step before termination.
Exactly. By entering this into the public record, the corporation fundamentally attempts to undermine the public assertion that his subsequent termination a few months later was completely unforeseen.
They're basically telling the court and the public he knew this was coming.
Right.
Then the lawsuit targets the timeline of his independent venture. Wink alleges that a secret business was already in motion while he was still cashing their checks.
This is a massive legal claim.
Public records presented in the research show that an entity named Matt the Weatherman, Inc. was incorporated in April 2024.
Which is well over a year before his January 2026 firing.
Additionally, a trademark application for the term Weatherview was filed.
This is a critical component of their breach of fiduciary duty claim.
What does that mean exactly in this context?
The corporation is arguing that the employee was actively utilizing his highly visible current position and potentially company time or intellectual resources to build a parallel, competing architecture. They are constructing a narrative of a calculating employee preparing a lifeboat while simultaneously collecting a chief meteorologist's salary from the primary employer.
So it shifts the narrative from wronged employee to opportunistic competitor. The lawsuit also brings up an incident involving Publix.
This part is fascinating.
For those outside of Florida, Publix is a massive grocery chain and a monumental advertiser in the state. In May 2025, Devitt received a written warning.
Over a GIF.
Right. A fan had complained on social media that Publix stopped carrying Wink's hurricane guides in their stores, and Devitt allegedly replied to that complaint with a GIF of the Grinch.
We have to deeply analyze the profound public relations and financial implications of that specific interaction.
Because it seems small, but it's not.
Publix is an absolute institution in Florida, and their advertising spend on local television is substantial, especially leading into hurricane season.
Yeah, they spend a lot of money.
So when the chief meteorologist of a local station publicly mocks a major corporate partner using a negative cultural touchstone like the Grinch,
it creates immediate financial friction.
Absolutely. The human resources and sales departments don't interpret this as a playful digital interaction.
No, they see direct insubordination and active damage to a vital revenue stream.
The sales team has to field angry calls from the grocery chain's marketing executives, all because of a meme.
That's a nightmare for the sales guys. And the allegations in the lawsuit just keep coming. They claim he was moonlighting by acting as an unapproved expert witness in an October 2025 deposition.
Another breach of policy, allegedly.
Furthermore, Wink includes serious claims of defamation. They state that Devitt's initial Facebook post following his firing incited such severe public backlash that it actually resulted in death threats against representatives of the broadcasting company.
The overarching strategy of this 60-page document is narrative deconstruction.
Break down his good guy image.
Exactly. Devitt built a highly effective, incredibly resilient public image as the dedicated, nice guy meteorologist focused solely on community safety.
The legal complaint attempts to systematically dismantle that halo.
It attempts to replace the image of the dedicated public servant with a portrait of an insubordinate, brand-damaging employee.
An employee who ignored management directives, secretly planned a rival business, and insulted critical advertisers.
That's the picture they are trying to paint for the judge.
Okay, Let's unpack this for a second because the logic feels a bit strained to me.
What do you mean?
If he was such a massive headache for this station, if he was violating brand standards, insulting major advertisers with Dr. Seuss gifts, ignoring leadership plans, and secretly building a competing corporation,
Yeah.
why on earth did they keep him on the air through the brutal hurricane season in the fall of 2025? If he was that bad, why not fire him in August? Were his ratings just too good to lose?
You've identified the fundamental paradox of broadcast management.
Really, it's just about the numbers.
Talent leverage is dictated entirely by audience retention and ratings. During peak hurricane season, a local station's viewership spikes exponentially. It is their Super Bowl.
So they needed him.
If a meteorologist commands absolute trust from the key demographic, management will often tolerate significant internal friction to maintain market dominance during the most critical rating periods.
They likely calculated that terminating their most recognized face while major storms were actively threatening the Gulf of Mexico would be commercial suicide.
The audience backlash during a crisis would destroy their credibility.
So they effectively held their noses, waited until the season concluded, and executed the termination in January when the weather was calm.
That is the most logical operational timeline, yes.
That makes total sense. But the lawsuit didn't stop at corporate insubordination. It took a deeply personal, highly sensational turn that absolutely ignited the audience once the details became public.
It really threw gasoline on the fire.
We are moving into what is easily the most heavily debated claim in the research regarding Devitt's alleged gambling.
This section of the legal complaint represents a significant and, frankly, risky escalation by the broadcasting company.
The suit formally alleges that Devitt visited the Seminole Casino Hotel and other unlawful gambling arcades during his scheduled working hours.
And the evidence they included is highly unusual.
The details included in the lawsuit are incredibly specific and honestly a bit bizarre for a formal legal filing. Wink includes a Facebook message from a supposed casino employee.
Completely unverified.
This completely unverified message claims the employee saw Devitt there, quote, almost every night on his break.
And it gets very personal.
It does. The message goes out of its way to note that he drove a BMW with a Penn State sticker and then passes intense personal judgment on him,
Stating he's a public figure, kids look up to him, and he needs to find a new hobby.
It's just wild to see that in a legal document.
Incorporating a direct quote from an unverified social media direct message into a federal or state-level legal complaint is a highly aggressive and potentially perilous litigation tactic.
Why is it perilous?
It introduces blatant hearsay and highly subjective moral judgment into a document that should theoretically focus entirely on contractual breaches and measurable damages.
It reads more like a tabloid expose than a corporate legal brief. When we revisit the research packet to see how the fans reacted to this specific gambling allegation, the response was extreme skepticism.
They didn't buy it for a second.
The audience immediately spotted what they perceived as a glaring contradiction. According to the commenters, Wink had previously indicated that Devitt took long breaks during his shift, specifically to help his wife with their child.
Now, the lawsuit claims he was spending his breaks at a casino.
The audience immediately recognized the mechanical difficulty of the timeline the lawsuit presented.
Viewers actively debated the logistical probability of an individual driving from the television studio to the casino, gambling, and returning to the set within the strict confines of a standard broadcast break.
It just doesn't add up geographically.
But beyond the pure logistics, this raises profound, sweeping questions about modern employment law and public relations strategy.
Like what?
Does an employer possess the legal right to dictate, monitor, or publicly scrutinize lawful activity as conducted by an employee during their unpaid break periods?
Right. Gambling at a legal casino isn't a crime in Florida. Driving a BMW isn't a crime. So is this just a calculated smear campaign designed to break his public halo?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, including what essentially amounts to a high school-style rumor from a Facebook direct message within a formal lawsuit, carries immense risk for the station.
It's a bad look.
It heavily suggests the corporate entity is grasping for narrative control through character assassination.
Instead of reinforcing their position as a damaged business entity seeking rightful compensation.
Right. It risks making the broadcasting company appear incredibly petty and vindictive to a judge, and certainly to the public.
It fundamentally backfired in the court of public opinion, didn't it?
Oh, massively. It further galvanized his supporters who viewed it as a desperate low-blow attack on a family man.
The court of public opinion is clearly overwhelmingly on Devitt's side. The fans are fiercely protective and ready to go to war for him online.
But the actual court of law in Florida operates by a very different, much colder set of rules.
And that brings us to the final major section of our research: armchair lawyering versus Florida reality.
The comment sections in the research packet are filled with absolute certainty regarding contract law.
People speak with immense authority about what Wink can and cannot do.
However, public intuition regarding restrictive covenants, which is what a non-compete is frequently misaligned with statutory reality, particularly in this jurisdiction.
Let's dissect the legal research to explain why the fans' legal theories are mostly wrong and what Devitt actually faces, because it's pretty daunting.
It is a steep hill to climb.
Myth number one that we see repeated endlessly in the comments: they fired him, so his non-compete is automatically void.
That is unequivocally false.
It is.
Yes. Florida is an extremely employer-friendly jurisdiction regarding restrictive covenants. Under Florida Statute 542.335, a non-compete agreement is not automatically nullified simply because the employer initiates the termination.
Wait, so even if they fire you, they can still restrict where you work?
Exactly. The statute explicitly dictates that if the agreement is reasonable in time, geographic area, and line of business, and protects a legitimate business interest.
Like protecting their advertising base or their audience metrics.
Right. If it protects those interests, the court is obligated to enforce it. The circumstances of the departure do not magically erase a signed contract.
Wow. Okay, myth number two that is everywhere in the research: Florida is a right-to-work state, so he has a constitutional right to work in his chosen profession, and they can't stop him from launching his own weather page.
This is perhaps the most common misunderstanding in American employment law.
Explain that for us.
The phrase right to work specifically relates to union labor laws. It means an employee cannot be compelled to join a labor union or pay union dues as a condition of employment.
Oh, so it has nothing to do with non-competes.
It has absolutely zero legal bearing on the enforceability of a private non-compete contract between an employer and an employee.
To understand how this actually plays out in the real world, the research provides some fascinating historical comparables. Look at the Jennifer Ross radio case in Florida.
The Jennifer Ross case is highly relevant precedent. She was a prominent broadcast personality subject to a non-compete.
And what happened?
When she attempted to pivot, a Florida court did indeed grant an injunction enforcing the restriction, keeping her completely off the air in the competing market for the specified duration of her contract.
They actually benched her.
What's crucial here is how the court separated the issues. The court separated the enforcement of the blackout period from the financial damages.
Okay, meaning what?
While the broadcasting company struggled to definitively prove specific monetary losses attributable to her breach, because it's hard to prove exactly how many dollars left because she left, the injunction itself was upheld.
They couldn't necessarily prove she cost them $1 million, but they could legally force her to sit on the sidelines. The research also points to the 1996 Lori York case with WFLA in Tampa, and a more recent case involving Ashley Brown at Weiss HTV in Indiana.
These broadcast meteorologist non-compete fights are not new. They've been happening for decades.
And we have to look at the federal backdrop here, because a lot of people thought non-competes were banned nationwide recently.
That is another area of significant public confusion.
The FTC tried to do something.
Right. The Federal Trade Commission did attempt to implement a nationwide ban on non-compete agreements, which would have drastically altered this landscape. However, that federal rule was blocked by the courts and officially dropped in 2025.
So it never went into effect.
Right. Therefore, there is no federal blanket protection overriding these specific employment contracts.
So the strict, employer-friendly state laws of Florida remain fully intact and operational.
Furthermore, Florida recently enacted the Choice Act of 2025, which provides even more specific, rigid frameworks for enforcing these agreements under certain compensation thresholds,
making it even harder for employees to simply walk away and compete. So Devitt is in a highly precarious legal situation. The station might face a massive uphill battle, proving exactly $100,000 in actual lost advertising revenue or tangible damages.
That money part is hard to prove.
But based on the statute and the precedent, they have a very strong, highly documented legal path to getting a judge to issue an injunction that forces him to shut down his independent weather pages and cease broadcasting entirely until the non-compete expires.
Precisely. The burden of proof for securing an injunction under Florida law is heavily weighted toward protecting the employer's established business interests.
If they can show he's utilizing the goodwill he built while on their payroll to siphon their audience, the judge is statutorily inclined to pause his operations.
Yes.
So what does this all mean for Matt? If the law is so heavily stacked in Wink's favor, why do so many of these high-profile broadcasting lawsuits end up quietly settling out of court instead of setting massive, industry-defining legal precedents?
That's the million-dollar question.
Why wouldn't the corporation just utterly crush him in court to send a message to the rest of the newsroom?
Because litigation requires the excruciating process of legal discovery.
Opening up the books.
If Fort Myers Broadcasting Company pushes this to a fully public trial, their internal communications, their granular rating metrics, their disciplinary protocols, and the specific, potentially embarrassing communications regarding why other meteorologists departed the station suddenly become a matter of public record.
That's a huge deterrent for a corporation.
Furthermore, prolonged litigation guarantees sustained negative press. Every court date is a new headline reminding the audience they fired their favorite weatherman.
It just drags the story out.
The corporation must calculate whether enforcing the non-compete is worth the immense cost of legal fees, the exposure of their internal operations, and the perpetual bleeding of their public goodwill.
It's a cost-benefit analysis.
Often, a quiet negotiated settlement is the most pragmatic business decision for both parties, allowing everyone to save face and avoid a grueling public trial.
It's a massive high-stakes game of leverage. We're bringing all these threads together now.
It really is the ultimate showdown.
We have the legal jeopardy of a heavily documented corporate lawsuit, the intense, almost militant public outrage, and the shifting future of local media all colliding in Southwest Florida.
It is a definitive standoff that encapsulates the modern media era.
On one side, you have a beloved meteorologist holding the ultimate trump card in media. Absolute, unwavering community loyalty forged during life-threatening weather events.
And on the other side, you have a highly resourced corporate entity armed with a deeply documented legal strategy operating within a jurisdiction that actively favors employer restrictions.
It leaves us with a broader industry question to ponder long after the legal briefs are filed and the dust settles. Think about how you consume news today.
It's totally different now.
In an era where a local weatherman can reach hundreds of thousands of viewers instantly on his personal smartphone, providing faster, more personalized updates than a multi-million-dollar network can transmit through their massive broadcast antennas.
Who actually owns the audience?
Exactly. Does the corporation own the viewers because they built the studio, bought the cameras, and secured the FCC license?
Or does the individual own the audience because they built the trust night after night, storm after storm?
Is the traditional, monolithic, local news model already obsolete in the face of absolute digital independence? That's something to think about.
It really is.
You've been listening to Meteorology Matters, created by meteorologist Rob Jones. Thanks for listening, and remember, meteorology always matters.